Okay, Kengi versus YellowDragon. Kengi up at the top with L and 1 mutant. YellowDragon down the bottom with L and 3 mutants. Both players using nature and light. Kengi using mana and YellowDragon using dark. YellowDragon's turn. He starts first and he opens with a very aggressive elf. How will Kengi decide to use... how to answer this? He decides with a fireball. Down goes the elf, which of course is a good resource trade for YellowDragon, but it does give Kengi an EXP advantage and does get that elf off the board. YellowDragon decides to switch to a defensive foot and charges up. And it's Kengi's turn, who decides to go aggressive now. So both players have now switched their roles around. Aggressive YellowDragon becomes defensive, and defensive Kengi goes aggressive. It worked out well for him against Neonworks. Let's see if it works out well against YellowDragon. YellowDragon's turn now, of course. Can he answer this Forest Keeper Imp? Now, with his resources, you would assume that he has a command hunting in there somewhere, possibly a Drag to Hell, but no... possibly a Holy Missile, but apart from the Holy Missile, no way of removing that Forest Keeper Imp for equal cost. Decides not to bother answering the imp at all and instead plays a flying sword on the right hand side, which is unfortunately for YellowDragon immediately answered by a magic missile, and the Forest Keeper Imp does manage to get the 3 damage off, which is quite painful to receive at level 1. Ideally, of course, you don't want to receive any damage whatsoever at level 1 because it has a cumulative effect on your HP growth over the next couple of levels. YellowDragon decides to go with a Nata and a Kadir's Guillotine, opening up with a very, very aggressive play there. The Kadir's Guillotine, thanks to Nata's attack value, kills that Forest Keeper Imp. Leaves Nata out on the field. The Kadir's Guillotine, of course. Kengi not really going to want to leave either of those out there, but with 16 HP on Nata, Kengi would have to put down a pretty resource-intensive answer. He'd basically have to drop a creature and a command hunting. It looks like that may be what he's going to do. Forest Keeper Imp comes out, and will... he use a command hunting? He does. A light command hunting at -1, which we've seen before in this tournament, and that takes out the Nata. Now, of course, if YellowDragon brings out another creature with a high enough attack value, then Kadir's Guillotine will simply activate once again and kill the Forest Keeper Imp once again. But let's see if he can actually do that. With 6 resources into light, he may be able to. If he's got something like a Mage 39 years old hidden, squirreled away somewhere in there, that might be enough. But judging by the time he's taking to think about it, he has no obvious answers. So let's see. We got the chat cheering for both Kengi and YellowDragon here. Command hunting comes out, and not going to bother playing the creature apparently. Just going to drop that command hunting and charge up. This, of course, leaves the Kadir's Guillotine a little bit exposed, and down it goes. Flying Sword, plus another command hunting. Aggressive plays here by Kengi, but he can afford to do so because YellowDragon's resources are also fairly low. And that Flying Sword, of course, nothing to sneeze at. 7 attack right now. It will have 6 on Kengi's turn because of its ability. But 6 damage, not really something that you generally want to put a creature in front of, especially when your opponent has enough resources to use a removal spell. Command Hunting comes out, once again takes care of that Flying Sword, and YellowDragon levels up to 3, taking a level lead. Now, Kengi can play something here and immediately level up, which is what he does, plays a Flying Sword, and levels up. Once again, using a very low-cost chip damage deck to apply continuous pressure onto YellowDragon. Let's see if it pays off for him. Lorna, -1, it looks like, comes out on the left-hand side of that Flying Sword. YellowDragon once again ignoring his opponent's threatening creature in order to try to put pressure onto him. Decides to charge up and then revive from the grave, hurting both players. Kengi does the same thing, revives cards from the grave, obviously trying to get some removal spells back into his hand, and there it is, the magic missile comes out, takes care of that Lorna -1. Now the Lorna -1, of course, good card, doesn't gain grave cost, will always cost the same amount of resources no matter how many times it gets killed. But you do, of course, have to use an action to revive it from the grave, and that will, again, actually hurt your HP. So it's not it's not perfect, but it does mean that YellowDragon can conceivably outlast his opponent in the long term. Decides to charge up on his first action, and let's see how second and third decide to be used. Light Command Hunting comes out again. That's a 5 resource spell now a 6 thanks to the grave cost. and charges up. Okay, so YellowDragon just focusing on removing his opponent's threats right now and trying to gain as much resource as possible. Kengi, knowing that that's what YellowDragon is planning on doing, just brings out a single solitary flying sword once again and charges up for the remainder of his turns. YellowDragon discards into darkness. Are we going to see a Kadir's Guillotine? Possibly. But possibly not. It depends on whether or not he has any creatures left that can actually deal the necessary, or that have the necessary attack value. But okay, Kadir's Guillotine does come out, as does Wanderer Sarah Light. Interesting. Down goes the Kadir's Guillotine. Now, Kengi may choose to revive from the grave here to get Wanderer Sarah Light onto his side of the field. Let's see if he does. He goes for the charge. Discards into the grave, and ambush comes out. Okay, so not going to bother dealing, not going to bother with the revival back and forth. Decides instead just to put all of his resources into removing both threats. Both players now doing not fantastically for resources. Kengi with a slight lead there with 9 nature, but only 3 mana and 0 light. And YellowDragon, of course, running a 5, 1, and 3. Kengi still trying to play, put a lot of aggressive pressure on, and revives from the field, revives from the grave, obviously, which hurts YellowDragon a little bit more, but does put Lorna -1 back into YellowDragon's hand, which could be useful. But he decides to go for Skeleton instead. Bold move, given that he knows that Kengi has Command Hunting and has more than enough resources to cast that spell. So let's see what he decides to do next. Command Hunting to remove that elf. Okay, so he's not worried about the skeleton being immediately removed and the elf getting the damage through. Now, of course, that it's removed and charges up. YellowDragon beginning to fall a little bit behind now in terms of resources. Kengi just keeping up that little chip damage removal spell. Combos just going and going and going, but of course every time he does it, it costs him a little bit more, and now his resources are right back down to where YellowDragons are. Both players here just really racking up their grave costs. A lot of low cost cards here coming out, but I think we've seen the last of the Kadir's Guillotine, unfortunately, because it's a lot of fun as a card, but having gone twice into the grave, I don't think we'll see YellowDragon build up enough resources for that again. Another charge, which goes into light, which YellowDragon may or may not be happy about. It does allow him to charge back up towards the Command Hunting light, but he may prefer if he was getting some resources into nature so that he can bring his Nata and other cards back out again. Out comes the Lorna -1 in front of that Forest Keeper Imp. That is, of course, not going to survive the damage, so that is YellowDragon playing a very just defensive pacing there. Decides to go for that, and the revival out of the grave off the Lorna. Good job, says Kengi, and the Forest Keeper Imp lands a finishing blow. An excellent piece of grave manipulation by Kengi there. Well played to YellowDragon, and congratulations to Kengi, who once again moves up into the finals. Alright, so Vertsude up at the top with the S hero and 4 mutants, Snowleopard down at the bottom with 2 mutants and the S hero. Both players running gold, nature, and light. Vertsude opens with an aggressive leopard against Snowleopard. We're seeing that a lot, actually. And let's see how Snowleopard decides to answer it. An OCD, yes, Morte, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. Snowleopard decides not to answer it. Interesting. Decides to charge up instead. Discard, rather, sorry, into nature. So, let's see what we shall see. With S, of course, you always expect it to be an ambush find, but who knows? Who knows? Vertsude not entirely sure what Snowleopard has just dropped, having to give it a little bit of a think. Does he want to play another creature, be really bold about this? Or he does. He wants to be very bold about it. He drops the light elephant, but it is answered by the ambush vine. So Vertsude is going to have to invest in a removal spell if he wants the elephant to survive and deal any damage. Thanks to S's ability, of course, the ambush vine will kill the elephant before the elephant is before the elephant is able to deal any damage of its own. Oh. So let's see. Snowleopard, considering whether or not he wants to do something about that leopard, or whether he wants to charge up and gain a resource advantage early on in the game. decides to go for the command hunting, really wants that elephant taken down immediately, so now there is no advantage really to Vertsude in removing that ambush vine. It would just put it right back into the grave. Vertsude decides to level up, does the 3 damage to Snowleopard. Snowleopard levels up and deals 3 damage to Vertsude. Both players more or less even in terms of resources, more or less even in terms of health, and almost exactly, in fact I think it is exactly even in terms of experience. So, and both have a creature with 2 attack value out onto the field. Both players using S, so both will be taking 1 extra damage from all creature hits. So far, something of a mirror match. Citizen Gold +1 comes out, lands in front of the ambush vine. That will kill Snowleopard's ambush vine unless he decides to answer. He drops an elf in front of the leopard, because of course now the elf will take care of that immediately. Paralyzing Bullet comes out. That is going to weaken the citizen enough that it dies. However, of course, thanks to Citizen's ability, it will put some light resources into Vertsude's camp pool, basically. So, Gold Citizen +1, very, very good card. Well, very, very good card, but it is a good card. It's a very good card. It's the best version of Citizen that you can run. So let's see if Vertsude takes advantage of the light resources he was just given. He does, and he manages to remove that elf with a command hunting. This takes him down to even number of resources as Snowleopard decides to play aggressively again, drops the elf down in front of the ambush vine. Will Snowleopard decide to answer that elf or not? Let's find out. He decides to answer the leopard with a light elephant and a command hunting. So once again, the elephant and the command hunting, and that is 3 damage comes out onto Vertsude. Both players really not giving each other any ground whatsoever. Both of them ready to level up to 3 now, and both of them with creatures on the field and a decent amount of resources in their pool. Vertsude, of course, a slight resource lead at the moment. Snowleopard with 0 light, and Vertsude, of course, up with 5. But equally, Vertsude only has 3 nature, and Snowleopard has 5. So not too big of a disparity. Out comes the command hunting. Both players just really using these chip damage creatures and the command hunting to go to town on each other, and levels up. Snowleopard levels up first and then drops a Tsubaki, interesting, and the ambush vine deals the 3 damage. Tsubaki charges up her energy up to 3. Now Tsubaki, of course, 20 effective HP at the moment, so the only way that Vertsude can really remove her at this point immediately is with a light command hunting, and there it is. Light command hunting comes out, kills the Tsubaki. Tsubaki deals 3 damage onto the leopard, and the leopard is now free to deal damage onto Snowleopard. Citizen Gold +1 comes out once again, out in front of that ambush vine, and 3 damage from the leopard comes out onto Snow. Cocoon of Evolution comes out onto the Citizen +1, so Snowleopard not going to let Vertsude get any light bonuses off that, and he decides to charge up to try to gain a resource advantage. Looks like he's going to charge up a second time. He is. Okay, so the resources are racking up. That ambush vine is going to kill that cocoon unless it gets removed, but it is removed. Vertsude playing very, very aggressively, taking care of that ambush vine with a holy missile, and charges up. Just going to leave that leopard out onto the field. Just going to leave that cocoon there. Force Snowleopard to remove it, otherwise the cocoon will, of course, hatch on its next turn. So, a bit of an awkward situation here for Snowleopard. He has to remove that cocoon before it transforms back into the citizen, because you don't really want to deal with that. It would have been a wasted cocoon spell. But equally, you feel bad about using big removal spells against it because it only has 2 HP. Big revival there by Snowleopard costs him 8 HP, dropping him all the way down to 1. He absolutely needs to answer both this leopard and this cocoon +1 now this turn, or risk losing on his next turn. He decides to go for an elephant in front of the cocoon and a leopard in front of Vertsude's leopard. He is going to let that that Citizen Gold +1 come right back out. Of course, it now has 14 attack value and 22 HP, so that is going to be extremely painful, and is, of course, going to immediately eliminate that light elephant. And it will put Snowleopard into a very awkward situation. He can use command hunting next turn, provided it's a double nature drop. We're about to see another command hunting, aren't we? Out comes the command hunting, down goes the elephant, and Snowleopard dies to a gold citizen +1. Don't underestimate a citizen. Indeed, Vertsude takes the victory. Very well played there. Well played to Snowleopard, and congratulations to Vertsude. It looks like once again it is going to be Kengi versus Vertsude in the finals. Wow. Let's make a start here. Kengi up at the top with 1 mutant and the L hero. Vertsude down at the bottom with 4 mutants and the S hero. Opens with an aggressive fox, which is immediately countered by a firebolt. Once again, this is for all the marbles. Whoever wins this fight will walk away with 10 million gold after tax, okay? This isn't 10 million gold and then 20% of it is taken off. You are going to get 20 million gold off this. Forest Keeper Imp comes out on Kengi's side. Now he's ready to level up to 2. Vertsude answers that with a Holy Missile, gets it off the field, and now Vertsude as well is ready to level up. Elf comes out instead of a level up by Kengi, which is very interesting. Vertsude thinking about that now. Decides to level up instead, going to take that elf damage. Kengi levels up, the elf deals the damage, and of course that gives Kengi a little bit of an XP lead, as well as 8 HP lead. Out comes that gold citizen +1 that we saw so much of in Snowleopard's fight, and that's going to land in front of the elf, which will of course kill the elf long before the elf can kill it. Elephant comes out on the right hand side. Vertsude answering Kengi's new aggressive style with a very aggressive style of his own. Opens him up to a command hunting though, and there is the command hunting. It comes out, takes care of that elephant, and another command hunting comes out. Command hunting light +1. Kengi just really laying into Vertsude now. Elf does 3 damage thanks to S's negative side of her ability, and it is Vertsude's turn. Vertsude now taking a pretty strong resource lead, but let's see if he can make the most of it. Leopard comes out in front of the elf, and elf comes out on the right hand side of the leopard. Vertsude just playing very aggressively again. Playing his cards almost like he's guarding them against Hunt, but that is, of course, guarded, that's banned, rather, in this tournament. Kengi discards into Nature, is ready to level up, drops a Tiger, turning Vertsude's tactics against him, if everyone remembers the last tournament, when Vertsude actually managed to pull the victory out by using a surprise Tiger. Obviously something that is sunk into Kengi's mind, as he's been using a Tiger of his own this entire tournament. Command Hunting comes out, takes care of that Tiger, and Vertsude decides to level up. Of course, the Tiger already has done its damage. The Leopard and the Elf are both low attack values. Nevertheless, of course, thanks to S's ability, if any creature is put in front of either one of them, they will do 3 extra damage. Command Hunting comes out, takes care of that weakened Elf, and Vertsude's Elf is left out on the field. He levels up to 3, does 2 damage onto Kengi. Kengi leading in terms of HP, and more or less even in terms of resources. Decides to play an aggressive Flying Sword, ignoring that Elf for the moment. Resurrects from the grave. We're going to see a charge up. 4, 4, and 4, and Vertsude at 5, 4, and 8. So Vertsude really does need to answer that Flying Sword. At 15 HP, he can't really afford to take too much more damage. But, of course, every time you answer one of these guys, it's going to cause grave cost increase on whatever spell you use. Command Hunting comes out, takes care of that Flying Sword, and that leaves an open field for the Elf. Vertsude charges, just wants to maintain a resource lead if he possibly can. Does 2 damage to Kengi, chipping away Kengi, using the tactics we've been seeing for this entire tournament from him. Just a lot of very low-cost chip damage creatures coming out onto the field, followed up with low-cost Command Hunting spells. Let's see if Vertsude can answer this easily. Mai comes out, immediately takes care of that Flying Sword. Now, Mai's presence on the field, of course, will protect the Elf from any Command Hunting damage. So Kengi is going to have to play a creature, play a Command Hunting, that'll kill Mai, but it will still leave the Elf out on the field. It's not an ideal situation for him to find himself in. However, thanks to that aggressive play, he is going to take a resource lead. So out comes the Firebolt, out comes an aggressive Elf on the center of the field. And will he charge up? He does. There we go. 2, 4, and 3, and 1, 6, and 7 on Vertsude's side. Good amount of nature and light resources, but lagging way behind in terms of gold. Of course, Kengi not doing significantly better with only 2 in mana and 3 in light. Vertsude brings out Elephant in front of the Elf and answers with Command Hunting of his own, dropping his own resources down to 1, 1, and 3. Is he going to charge up? He pretty much has to with his resources the way they are, and he does. That leaves 7 damage out onto the field, which will take Kengi down to the same amount of HP as Vertsude himself has. So we assume Kengi doesn't really want to see that. Discards into nature. Is he building up for something else? Another discard into nature. He's building up for a tiger. He is. Out comes the tiger. Drops the attack value of the elephant down to 2. And the elf on the right-hand side down to -3. Rendering that slot basically unusable for Vertsude. Not ideal. Vertsude, of course, would significantly prefer that elf to be killed instead of simply, attack value lowered and left on the field. A double charge up there goes into nature and discards a gold card, saving up for something for next turn, perhaps? Let's find out. Perhaps a leopard. Command Hunting -1 comes out. That will take care of that elephant, and the 8 damage from the tiger is going to come through. Ooh, a revival off Kengi, and that is going to take Vertsude down. That is going to be fatal damage thanks to S's ability. That extra 1 damage does do the necessary. Kengi has emerged victorious in the second Arcadian Grand Global Tournament. He will walk away with 10 million gold. Congratulations, Kengi, and well played to Vertsude there. Excellent fights.